Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Nanny Employer Wellness Diary podcast. My name is Levogile and I am your host. So in the next few weeks, I'll be talking about simplifying your nanny search from mindset all the way to the onboarding process. I figured that I should start with the foundation before I bring guests and we unpack some topics. So today I'll be talking about preparing your mindset before you hire a nanny so that you are aware of what you need to consider and think about. So when we hired our nanny the first time, we did it in a rush and we didn't anticipate the amount of work that is required from us to maintain a healthy working relationship. Our bottom line was us getting help with our daughter, and for the nanny it's the income. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work like that. There is so much that goes into you creating a healthy working environment. Some problems happen when we are winging it and we are not intentional. Most of the time, you won't get a supervisory role or a managerial position without being assessed or having some form of qualification to do the job. And if they were to take a chance on you, then you will most likely be taken for some form of training. As when we hire a nanny, we don't get to ask ourselves if we have the skills to manage someone. Managing people can be challenging, and if you don't have the capacity or the necessary skills to manage someone, you're going to be frustrated with having a nanny. Think about how we expect our nannies to have the skills to look after our children, and if they don't have the skills, we want them to have a teachable spirit. We also want them to be able to take instructions and just overall to be a pleasure to work with, right? Well, it's the same with nannies. They also want to work with families who are intentional about creating a conducive environment for them. Families that are going to respect them and are going to be given an opportunity to express their grievances. So you have to equip yourself with knowledge about people management. There are books that you can read and podcasts that you can listen to. You can also follow us on Instagram and other social media platforms at Property Domestic Solutions. We share educational content and we have resources to help you in this journey. Sometimes you won't really know if having a nanny is for you or is not for you. You just have to try it out, and if it's not for you, that is fine, because having a nanny is not for everyone. There are other alternatives like taking your child to daycare and getting a part-time housekeeper and babysitter, which will offer you the opportunity to get help without having to deal with the day-to-day issues that you would deal with when you have a full-time nanny. However, if you value convenience, or because of your circumstances like you working shifts, or it just makes financial sense for you to get a nanny, then you don't have a choice, but you have to spend time honing your people management skills, and you don't have to have everything figured out. Some of the things you will learn as you go once you have hired a nanny. And if you are 100% sure that you are going to hire a nanny, the second thing that I would recommend you do is to define the role you are going to take on with your family members or your partner, so that there is clarity and order before the nanny comes. I wish I knew this back then. It would have saved a lot of petty arguments that me and my ex-husband had. So the first time we hired a nanny, we never really had a game plan on who's who in the who's who, right? We were not so united. He was expecting me to handle everything that had to do with our nanny, while I was expecting we would work as a team to leverage on our strengths and weaknesses so that we could both be involved in managing our nanny, right? There's no right way or wrong way of doing things in relationships. If you and your partner are traditional in that the woman is the one handling everything that has to do with domestic work, then that is great. Just make it clear and be consistent when your nanny starts working so that there can be order and clarity. Even when you are still staying with your parents, there has to be clarity on who's going to give which instructions, as it is your parents' house, but the nanny is there to look after your child. It can get tricky, and most nannies would rather listen to elders' instructions than fulfilling your wishes. So this is why it is important to have these kinds of discussions. If you and your partner or family members don't have these kinds of discussions before your nanny starts, you might either create an unhealthy working relationship with your nanny, or they might take advantage of the fact that there is no unity, and they'll do as they please, knowing that they will get away with it. I've created a template that can help you as a guideline for you and your family members to start the conversation on who will take on which role. This is also ideal for families who choose nanny share as a childcare option. And nanny share is an arrangement where 2 or more families split the cost of one nanny who either cares for all the children together or divides her time between the 2 families. It is important when you choose this childcare option that you and the family you partner with know who is going to take on which role, so that the nanny can be clear on whom she reports to and on what. The link to download the guideline is in the description below. The third thing I would recommend you do is to assess your needs, and your needs should be aligned with your budget. I did a video on the cost of hiring a nanny. It's up on YouTube. You should check it out if you need clarity there. Your needs should also be aligned with your character and personality. I wish I had thought about this before I hired a nanny. I would have made different choices when it came to certain things. So my family recommended that I should get an older person because they would be more reliable, and I get it. It made sense then, right? But here's the thing about hiring an older person. You have to be strong-willed and have no issues giving an elder instructions. Having awkward conversations with them can be tough. So self-awareness is important, and you need to ask yourself such questions. Do you want a quiet person who is assertive, or an extrovert who knows how to read a room? But also, you should remember that you are hiring a nanny for your child, and essentially you will be co-parenting with your nanny. So if you're a quiet person and you recognize that your child will benefit from having someone that is bubbly and jolly, that is something to think about. You have to balance your needs with what the child needs. The other thing that you need to think about is the kind of skills and experience you want your nanny to have. I have to mention that things like experience won't take away the work you need to put in when it comes to communicating your house rules and how you want your child to be taken care of. The mistake we often make when we hire people who are experienced, we tend to not make that much effort in onboarding them. You could find a nanny that has, say, 10 years of experience and probably worked for 2 families. That is great on paper because it shows loyalty, right? And you feel at ease that your kids will be taken care of, and that can be true. But what if the families they work for, they are laid back people and you value a sense of agency? So even with a highly experienced nanny, it doesn't mean they are going to be a right fit for your family. If it's not the first time you're going to hire a nanny, you should not limit yourself when it comes to preferences because you've had bad experiences with a certain nationality or a certain age group. This is a mistake that we make, and I'm also guilty of this. You're not going to manage a nationality. You're going to manage a human being, and most of the time we don't audit our management skills. We shift the root of the problem and we make it about things that are on the surface level. The third thing that you have to be mindful of is that you have to be prepared to do the mundane things, right? Doing the mundane thing is going to save you a lot of headaches in the long run. You know, things like being compliant, that is having a contract, registering your nanny for UIF and compensation fund. It is such tedious tasks that are very necessary. People fail to be compliant because of many reasons, right? And I think that one of the reasons is that there are fewer consequences. The only way you'll be held accountable is if the nanny you employed is knowledgeable about their rights. Don't be that employer that is going to leverage on people's ignorance, please. If you don't have the time to outsource these tasks, there is HR for Home Services that will help you with contracts, registrations of UIF and compensation fund, even with payroll, right? But what you can't outsource, which can also be mundane, is the day-to-day management of the relationship. As I've mentioned earlier, that managing people is challenging, and to make it less challenging, you have to plan on having regular check-ins, whether it's once a week or once a month, depending on your schedule. Giving and receiving feedback should be a priority. Most relationships end up not working out because we harbor resentment and hold grudges, and things end up blowing up in our faces. I was thinking about this the other day. We expect full-on commitment from our nannies, and some employers don't bring their full commitment into the working relationship. I mean, if you are not compliant, you don't have a plan on how you're going to evaluate your nanny's performance, you don't prioritize giving and receiving feedback, you avoid tough conversations, then you're not bringing your full commitment into the working relationship. And expecting full-on commitment from your nanny just because you are paying them, it's not fair. If you are expecting full-on commitment and loyalty from your nanny, then you should also do your part. And this brings me to the last point I want to talk about, which is the power of being intentional. So just like when people are getting married, right? They don't get married to divorce. When you are hiring a nanny, you're not anticipating for things not to work out. Some working relationships don't work out because we are winging it and we are not intentional. I think one of the mistakes I made by winging it is relying on organic connection. And when problems came about, I just thought to myself that it was just growing pains, when in actual fact, it was lack of intentionality. The thing that I've come to learn with being intentional with a certain area in your life, it will have a snowball effect in other areas of your life. This actually reminds me of my previous workplace when I was being interviewed for a supervisory role. So prior to that, I never really held any managerial positions, So during the interview, they asked me, what is your leadership style? Then I went blank. I wasn't expecting that question to be asked like that, simply because it was an internal interview. They know I haven't led a team before. Because I was expecting to be asked questions like, what plans do I have for the team? What is the thing I would improve as soon as I get the role? And some scenario questions to assess if I'm ready to lead a team, By the way, I have created a nanny employer's guide that has interview questions that you need to ask your nanny. The link to the guide will be on the description. You shouldn't ask questions to catch people out, man. It's just so old school. Anyway, I did end up getting the job at some point, but this got me thinking that if I was intentional managing our nanny, I would have been able to reference some of the skills that are transferable. Like, you just hired a nanny, you should onboard them, you should evaluate their performances and hold space for them to give you feedback about how you are managing them. You should make time for regular check-ins and know how to handle conflicts. All of those things are applicable to the role, right? But because I was not intentional, it just didn't connect at that time. So if you have a nanny and you're currently working in corporate and you are looking into taking your career to the next level by applying for a team leader role, and you haven't really led a team before, then I would suggest putting the skills of being a nanny employer on your CV. Put them on your CV. I mean, think about it. If your nanny decides that you dismiss them unfairly and they then takes you to the CCMA, you will need to attend to the cases like any other employer. And if you are intentional with managing your nanny, you will be able to talk about the experiences during the interview, unlike me who went blank. And that is just the power of being intentional, right? Because how you do anything is how you do everything. I also have to mention that there is no formula for keeping a nanny. You could be intentional and do everything right and still have issues and still not get someone who is a right fit for your family. But doing the right thing and being intentional will exonerate you from feeling guilty and asking yourself, did I do enough? And if you didn't do enough, you should give yourself grace. Mistakes are welcomed. Take a step back and reflect and do better next time, you will eventually get a nanny who is the right fit. Also, don't forget to pray or manifest, or if you believe in amadlozi, upatla, whatever it is that you believe in, just center yourself, because you will be bringing someone into your personal space and they are going to contribute to your child's development. So you have to take this working relationship serious. Okay, so let's recap on what you need to be mindful of before you hire a nanny. So firstly, you have to ask yourself if you have the capacity and identify if you have to work on people management skills. Secondly, you have to know who is going to play which role with your partner or family members. The third thing is you have to assess your needs, and they have to be aligned with your budget, your character, and your child's need. And then lastly, you have to be intentional about creating a healthy working relationship. If you have hired a nanny before and you are listening to this episode, let me know in the comments what you wish you had known before. And that is it for today's episode. If you found this valuable, please leave a review, subscribe to this podcast, and share this information with people that you know who are currently looking for a nanny. Until the next episode, bye.